Hey everybody, welcome to another terrible podcast by comics. I am your host, Eerie Diamond, and we are welcoming writer Jeff Strand and Alice Henderson, right? Right. All right. Welcome guys. Let's get started.
All right.
Hey, Alice, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am a writer. I mainly write novels these days, but I've written comics in the past and video game material. And I'm also a wildlife researcher. So I spend a lot of time out in the wilds doing species presence surveys for grizzly bears and wolves and wolverines and jaguars and all kinds of cool animals. And I bring that wildlife work into my fiction.
Oh, that's very cool. Just real quick question. How big is a wolverine?
They average about 35 pounds. And if you were to hold one, be about yay big.
Okay. Wow. I honestly didn't know that they were real. I
get that a lot from my readers, actually. My latest book, Solitude of Wolverines, is about wolverines. And a lot of people were like, wait, that's more than like Hugh Jackman and the X-Men. And
yeah.
So they're feisty. They may be small, but they can like take down moose and they can fight grizzly bears off of kills. So they're scrappy.
Well, that does make sense why they named him Wolverine, because he's not supposed to be very tall. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And he's from Canada. There's lots of wolverines in Canada.
Right. Oh my God. Jeff, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Unlike Alice, I don't do anything interesting outside of my writing, but I've been doing this for a long time. So I'm up to about 50 books. Wow. Most of them are horror. So I'm pretty much identified as a horror writer, generally horror comedy. Although I've also done a bunch of young adult pure comedies. I've done a romantic comedy. I've done a smut comedy and various other things. But in general, I am a horror comedy writer.
I'm sorry, you did smut comedy? What's smut comedy?
One book called Bang Up. Bang Up, a filthy comedic thriller. So under my real name.
I'm going to write that down.
No shame. It's on my website. I'm proud of that book. But it is a filthy smut comedy. So
can you quickly just give me a little synopsis of the storyline? Because I've never heard of smut comedy in my life.
The opening is a guy meeting another guy in a pancake restaurant saying, look, I think my wife is getting lonely. I think she's going to try to cheat on me. I want you to seduce her, but do it so badly that she realizes that it's not worth it, and then she'll stay with me. And he pays the guy $1,000 to seduce his wife. Unfortunately, it goes extremely well, and then just mayhem and hilarious hijinks ensue. So it's not my typical book, but
no, but that's hilarious. I'm glad you got out of your box, as it were.
Yes.
That's great. So you've written 50 books.
Yes.
Wow, that's a lot of books. That's very cool. And most of them are a lot of horror, but then you have other things, which is very cool.
Right. Probably 4 out of 5 of the books I write are horror, and then every once in a while I say, I'm going to try something else, and then it sells poorly, and so then I come crawling back to horror.
I'm sorry. I just think that's I hear you, man. Lots of people try to dive into other other things, and then they realize, oh wait, I'm really good at the one thing. So good at it, So I do understand. Alice, tell me a little bit about how you got started as a writer. I mean, obviously everyone writes. Not everyone writes, but people will write. But what I'm saying is like actually getting published and actually being able to get that piece of it,
Yeah. I started writing really young. My dad gave me this old Underwood manual portable typewriter. And so I started writing like horror stories and sci-fi stories. And somewhere along the way, I think when I was about 6, I decided that really bad detective fiction should be written on this thing. So I was used to listening to like old time radio with these cool detectives that had smooth names like Sam Spade and could always solve their crimes and get the dames. And so I decided my detective should be super awkward and totally incompetent at picking up clues. And I named him Maynard A. Flitchenheimer, the third PI. So I started writing those, and my dad actually submitted some early stories of mine to like Cricket and magazines like that, which all rejected it. And it really wasn't until after graduate school, I got a job working for George Lucas, and I was writing video game material. And once I got those Star Wars credits, things really started to happen there. I was able to then write some Buffy the Vampire Slayer official novels for 20th Century Fox. And then that led into being able to get my original fiction published, my first original, meaning not like I own my own license, I own the copyright, as opposed to an IP like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So that led into getting some connections and getting my first original novel published. So it was really getting these credits, I think these licensed credits through what they call media tie-in novels, that really helped get my name out there, and it showed editors that I could meet deadlines, because the deadlines for these things are like 3 months, write a whole novel in 3 months. So that was really where things took off for me.
Wow. So how old were you when you got your first like thing published?
I was old. I had submitted for 14 years, short stories, novels with and that was me as an adult. So I was in my late 20s. So kind of, well, it felt old to me because I'd been submitting since I was in my early teens. But so that was the first one, was the Star Wars stuff.
Wow. Well, I don't think some people never publish, so I don't think you should be so hard on yourself. But that's really, wow, that's really interesting. Jeff, how did you get started? How'd you get into like actually making it a career? I guess I should say.
I started young like Alice too, and I also accumulated lots and lots and lots of rejections, which is a badge of honor, pretty much. It's not, I'm so ashamed of all the publishers who said no. It's like, that's right, I racked up 500 rejections before anybody published my stuff. And it took a long time. And I started as small as you can possibly get, because my first novel was an ebook. And now you say, yeah, well, that's no big deal. But in 2000, ebooks were like worse than not being published. People like actively hated them because you had to get them on a diskette, stick in your computer, and people just, it was horrible. And so I very, very slowly rose through those ranks, and then had some small press print stuff. And I had actually been published for probably, I think, 9 years before my first actual mass market book, where you can go in any Barnes and Noble and there it is on the shelves. And so I was doing that for a while. And then I started publishing young adult books, which were also, you can go into any bookstore in the world and find them. And then suddenly the horror line crashed and burned that I was publishing with. And I said, well, I'll try self-publishing, because my new book was supposed to be a quote unquote real book in about 3 months, but it's gone now. So I'm not going to spend the next 3 years trying to find a home for a werewolf novel. So I'll just try it myself. Then suddenly I realized I really like this. So I kind of switched to the hybrid model, where I self-publish most of my adult stuff and then traditionally publish the stuff for kids. And so it was kind of, when I started really small, sort of worked my way up to what everyone would say is the real publishing career, and then sort of veered off into self-publishing, which I really enjoy.
Why do you like that more? Why is it just you have more control over when you have to write or what your deadlines are, that kind of thing?
The control part is great. I like the fact that the book comes out when it's done and not a year after it's done. But mostly it's the financial aspect, where 6% royalties for a traditional publishing deal versus 70% royalties for a self-publishing book is why I get to write full time. When I was traditionally published, it wasn't even remotely a consideration. But once I started making, 12 times as much per book sold, even if I was selling fewer books, it was like, yeah, this works great. And then I got to quit my day job, and now I can be a slacker and just write all day.
Yes, I don't think writing professionally is being a slacker, but
no, it's actually, it haunts you all the time. There's never any time when you can say, all right, I'm done for the day. It's like, no, there's guilt at any moment that I'm not right now. I'm feeling guilty that I'm not working on stuff. So,
and Jeff, you write like how many books a year? I mean, you write.
Yeah, Jeff, how many books
a lot?
It cranked up once it was about 4 a year, and then COVID hit, and like, well, I don't get to go anywhere or do anything. So what else am I going to do? So I think it was 6 last year, but
That is amazing.
That's amazing.
well, I don't live next to a luxurious forest where I can spend the days hiking and seeing the wildlife and seeing
No.
wolverines. So it's like I'm trapped in the middle of metro Atlanta where there are, plague people running around outside my house. So I have to stay inside, and I can either binge watch Netflix all day or I can work on books. So I chose to work on books because that's what keeps me from crawling back to a day job. So
Wow. Wow. And tell me, what is your worst day job that you've had?
I'm a loyal corporate employee. So I worked for MetLife for about 20 years. So it was a difficult job. It was a high pressure job, but it was all numbers. So when you do numbers all day, you're not like, oh man, I just can't write another word, because I wasn't writing words. I was, analyzing numerical data all day. So it didn't suck away any creative energy because there was absolutely it was a purely analysis job. So it worked out really well because it didn't drain any creative energy.
Okay, Alice, same question. What's the worst day job you've had to have?
Well, I have to agree with Jeff that if you're doing something that's totally analytical, for years, and this is, I've worked for Restoration Hardware doing
Oh, that's right. That's right.
yeah. So a lot of Excel sheets and tracking shipments and that sort of thing. And but it definitely didn't tap into my creative energy. So I was able to go home and do that. But worst job I ever had, telemarketer, and I wasn't selling anything. I was doing fast food surveys. Like, what do you think of McDonald's? And
Oh
do you
my.
prefer McDonald's over Carl's Jr.? And everyone just hated me, understandably, and were rude, and it was awful. And that was the worst. But it did
Telemarketing
finance
was
some
also my
trips to Europe.
worst.
What,
Oh,
Jeff?
wow, you guys both did telemarketing.
I did telemarketing for 6 weeks, and it was my worst. And I was selling stuff.
Oh God, that's
And you
the
have
worst.
not encountered rage until you call up an elderly person to get them to renew their Catholic Digest magazine subscription. It sucks.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah, that's wow, that's where your horror comes from, huh?
It was
Yeah,
a
that is
bad
a
job.
nightmare. Wow. That's bad. And mine was a yogurt shop. I worked at a yogurt shop for like
Oh
a year.
wow.
Yeah, and that was terrible. It was
But the
awful.
yogurt shop, you're making people happy. You're giving them something they want. No one actually wants to be called at home.
But it's almost like you're giving away, like it's like your misery is making them happy. It's almost like it's bad. It's like people showing up to watch somebody get hanged. It's not good. I was so miserable at that job. It was terrible. And it was so it was really bad because I was a kid though. I was only like 18, but the thing is, like, then high school friends would come in and like screw with me because they were, it was just embarrassing. It's just embarrassing when you just do an embarrassing job. That's always the worst. But anyway, enough about me. So, and I'm sure that you guys, I just want to ask you this because this is a really, I think this is very interesting. Do you guys run into people that are like, oh, you're an author. Oh yeah, I've been thinking about writing forever, and the reason I bring this up is I'm a stand-up comedian, and if you ever are a stand-up comedian, one of the first things you'll hear is, I've always thought about doing that. And I'm like, do it, baby, just go get it or whatever. And they're like, no, really, I'm really funny. I'm like, yeah, I don't care. Like, so do you guys get that? Alice, do you ever get that?
All the time.
Yeah,
and
right.
It's and I'm always encouraging, and oh, that's great, you should go ahead and write that story. I get also, hey, I have the best idea for a story. For your next book, do this, do my life story. It's usually someone's life story. Mm-hmm. And they do. I think that people think, like you had said at the beginning, oh, I write. Sure, everybody writes, right? Whether it's a grocery store list or maybe you've written a novel or something, and you think, oh, sure, this should be easy, right? I'll just write my life story or I'll write a novel. And so then the next email I usually get from these people is, oh my God, how do you just keep yourself in this seat and keep writing? And how do you persist? And it's a tough job. And like Jeff said earlier, you are constantly thinking about it. Like you're thinking about your characters and what your plot should be. And even if you're not actively writing, it's still the wheels are always turning. And so I think people do think it's going to be really simple. And then they sit down and they're like, oh my God, and that's just writing the book part. Then there's the whole trying to get the thing published. And that's just, it's a long, hard road. And, but I always, try to encourage people and, you go ahead and do it. It's a great way to make a living. I mean, there's so much freedom involved, but it is much harder than I think people think.
Yeah. And by the way, so is stand-up comedy.
Oh, I can't even imagine stand-up comedy. I mean, talk about putting yourself out there.
Yeah, I want you to imagine you're on a stage and there's a bunch of people with rejection letters just waiting to hand them to you at the moment. Yeah, that's what it feels like. It's like, oh, by the way, nope. That's how it feels. It feels like, yeah, if it doesn't go well, that's exactly how it feels. So yeah, but Jeff, do you encounter that a lot? I have,
It's great up to a point. So if someone says, I would like to be a writer, then it's like, great, let's talk about that. Do you have any advice? Yes, I have lots of advice because I've messed up all the time. Then when it crosses the line into, can I tell you about my book? Then you have to, the frozen, sure, tell me about your book expression. And then it gets worse with the, well, can I send you my book and you tell me what you think? And then it's like, no,
no.
Which would be the equivalent of, can I test my jokes out on you and see if they're funny? So.
I'm telling you, if I hear another person say you can have that, I'm gonna fucking kill them. Like they'll say the dumbest joke you can imagine. Deneen, you know what I mean? You're around comedians all the time. It's like they'll say a joke. They're like, I got a joke for you, and then they'll tell you the joke, and you're like, oh. And they're like, you can have that. I don't want that. That's not.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Or my favorite is when they tell me a joke that like has been told for centuries. That's not your joke. I can't tell somebody else's joke, dummy. You can't just like, I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm getting on a rant. I don't want to get on a rant. We're not
Rant away.
We're not doing that. But yeah, I was just curious because I get a lot of that. And I know my husband, he's a filmmaker and he gets a lot of that too. Oh, you should do a story about me and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, you're not that interesting. So it's, he's a little more blunt than I am. So tell me this, Alice, where do you get your inspiration, Alice?
Well, I used to write a lot of horror and fantasy and sci-fi. And back then I have a lot of very vivid nightmares and dreams. And I used to get ideas from that. Or if you've ever seen a movie and you're like, I'm so excited for this movie, and then it's horrible. And you're like, man, if I had done a movie about that subject, I would have done it this way or that way, So ideas like that. But I get ideas from all over the place. I mean, especially now with my new thriller series that's dealing with endangered species. I pull a lot on my real life experiences, my real life work working with wildlife. So if I'm in some creepy, remote, isolated setting out in the middle of the Rocky Mountains and working with bears or what have you, and wolves are howling at night, and then my overactive imagination is really going crazy, like what's something really suspenseful that could happen up here? And I freak myself out. What's the
I was going to say, what are you doing? Oh my God, what are you doing? Like, yeah, like some guy with a knife going through the forest. Oh shit, why did I just say that? Like, what are you thinking?
I wrote my horror novel Voracious set in Glacier National Park, and I was camped in Glacier National Park writing this thing, and the monster in it is this really smart shape-shifting creature, and I just kept picturing him outside the tent, like, and maybe he wasn't happy with how I was portraying him in the book. And so I was totally freaking myself out with that one.
Oh my God. Oh my God. But that is very cool though, that you kind of like bring in kind of everything. That's I think that's really cool. Jeff, how do you think of the terrible things you think of?
My process is pretty much the opposite. Mine's a really boring, methodical process where it's like, okay, my next book needs to be a horror novel. What haven't I written about? Okay, make a list. Like, let's do a werewolf novel. Okay, what can I do with a werewolf novel that hasn't been done before? And then I run down, it's a really boring, tedious process of just brainstorming options until I've come up with a story. So my dreams are basically like, if I remember the dreams, it's, oh, I didn't study for my math test, but I don't want to write a book about the main character who didn't study for his math test. So it's like, well, I can't, my
Wow.
dreams don't give me anything at all to work with.
So
And
you're telling me that Alice basically is mentally tormenting herself, and you have a spreadsheet, and that's how you
right.
get your ideas. This is two really different ways of approaching it. I think this is good. This is good. Two different. I like that.
Yeah, so it means that if someone is scratching outside the house, Alice will have this whole horrifying envisionment of what is going on. And I'm just like, clearly that was a branch, a harmless little branch.
No, it
scraped the
wasn't.
window.
No, maybe it was a branch, but it was from a tree that's going to eat you later.
Yeah.
That's no.
Let me go back to my spreadsheet to come up with a book idea.
Wow, really? Wow. You don't, like, if the lights go out, immediately look outside to see if it's just your house that the killer's hitting the lights on? You don't,
Well,
you're not.
I'm in Metro Atlanta, so yes, but not from the standpoint of a supernatural beast headed our way. So.
Okay, so here's my, okay, sure. So what does scare you? Is there something, because I'll tell you what scares me, little kid ghosts. Fuck them. I don't know. No, little kid ghosts. No, I don't do little kid ghosts. Fuck little kid ghosts. Okay. Now you go, Jeff. You go. What scares you? Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not a fan of tarantulas. I can write a whole book called Clowns versus Spiders that's about giant spiders invading a town. That doesn't scare me on the page. But if there was a tarantula right here, the podcast would be over. You would just click off.
Okay.
So spiders,
spiders. Okay.
I'm not as young as I used to be. I'm not necessarily, I'm invincible. I'm never going to die. There are times you think, oh crap. I'm at least halfway there now. So
I know, right? People will talk about like, oh, are you middle-aged? I'm like, well, if I die at 100, I am, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be a little earlier than that. So no, I'm much older. I'm on the other side of that mountain. Yeah. Sorry, I burst a little bit. Alice, I know everything scares you. So, but see, I'm more like Alice. I'm assuming that there's, I used to always say, I have a irrational fear of serial killers. And then people would tell me, well, that's not irrational. That's normal. But yes, I assume everything's going to kill me. That's why I would never live in the fucking forest. I don't know what you're doing, honey. That is scary. That is some scary stuff. But yeah, I'm more with you. I'm like that. I love the fact that you were thinking to yourself, that character is so vivid to me. He's sitting outside really mad that I'm portraying him this way. That's exactly the kind of mind I have too. It's scary. It's really scary. It's really scary. And Jeff, maybe you're a little bit more put together than we are. I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe.
I guess that's it.
I'll go to your house in the zombie apocalypse.
But I've been through a haunted house with Alice. We went to Universal Halloween Horror Nights together, and I think we were both very brave going through the haunted houses. So
yeah, good.
That was a blast, Jeff. You know, when you're waiting in line and we were just talking about horror movies, we just had the best time. And it was pouring rain, I remember too, and it was just awesome. And it was in Florida, Eerie. So, and although it was October, it was about 100 degrees and 100% humidity. So,
oh, fun.
Yeah. But I tell you, the scaredest I have ever been, the biggest scare I've ever had in my life. I came home from the grocery store, and my best friend was in my coat rack inside one of my coats, and he just went, ooh. And it was the scariest friggin' thing. I screamed. This is the only time in my life I've ever screamed. And it was a guy in a coat rack.
What is he, fucking Kato? He's not supposed to jump. What is he doing?
I need to point out that because of your background, when you did that trick, your hands disappeared.
Oh, it did.
Yeah, that was cool.
He like flipped the sleeves up when he did it. And just
no, but your hands actually disappeared into the background.
Why did he do that? Why would he do that?
I don't know. But it did lead to me making a short film called Coat Rack Massacre.
Oh my God. So you know what?
Even that I got an idea from.
He was trying to he was trying to inspire you. Actually, now I'm not mad at him anymore. I think that was brilliant, actually. Thanks, Deneen. Deneen's sort of like my unofficial co-host. She always has good questions and stuff like that. Deneen, did you want to click in with any questions?
Well, I had one, but Grimes had one too.
Oh, well,
That
you
was
know.
his.
Oh, have you ever been in a real haunted house? Got Jeff?
I'm going to give a bummer answer to this and say, no, I'm pretty much a skeptic. I will say that on my honeymoon, we went to New Orleans. We went on an overnight ghost tour, which was lots of fun, but I didn't encounter any kind of evidence of the supernatural, but I enjoyed the experience. So I like, some friends and I went to a cabin in the woods to see if we could find Bigfoot. So I like that stuff. I didn't think we would find Bigfoot. Didn't think we would see ghosts.
No one has.
So I enjoy all that stuff, but no, I would not say that I've ever been in a haunted house or been ambushed.
Really?
By a Sasquatch.
You've never experienced anything like that, huh? Interesting.
Jeff should have been
Alice?
at last week's show.
Oh, I know. Well, we had Lloyd, we had some paranormal people on, which was pretty cool. To Alice, anything, what was the question? Have you ever been in a real haunted house?
Oh my gosh, more times than I can count. My house growing up was particularly creepy, and my grandmother's house too, around the corner. Like I'd be in my grandmother's house and we could hear something walking around upstairs, doors would slam. She had a rocking chair that would rock on its own.
Oh
my God.
Like classic shit. That's
oh
like
my gosh, I feel
classic.
the chills thinking about it. And then the house I grew up in, I always had the worst feelings in my sister's bedroom. And I hated going in there. I felt sorry she had to sleep in that room. And even just to add to the creepiness, that was where the attic trap door was. But my mom always, scoffed. And my father was a huge, he loved ghosts and Bigfoot and sea serpents and everything. He was really into that stuff. But my mom always scoffed. And then years later, she had my sister's room redecorated. And the guy that was in there working quit. And he said, I never want to be in that room again. I can't even be in there. So she was like, wow, maybe my daughters had something they were thinking of. And then I've written to Grimes about this. I've been in the Stanley Hotel where Stephen King based The Shining on. Just such, I felt something touch my back. And I remember calling Grimes and saying, how do I get this thing to know that I'm not interested, leave me alone. And then another creepy place, the Banff Springs Hotel in Banff National Park. Whoo, if you ever want to go up there and just feel like,
yeah, Jeff, why don't you go up there?
Yeah.
It's creepy.
You need to, no, Jeff's like, no, hell no, I'm not doing that.
No, I'd be happy to go. I would just wouldn't ruin it because I'm not, ghosts don't exist. You guys are a bunch of lamos. I would be fully immersed in the experience, but I wouldn't see any ghosts.
Oh, I understand.
Like
I grew up in a haunted house.
Hotel in LA. Is it the
Yes.
Motel or?
Yeah, I forgot what it's called.
American Horror Story did kind of based one of their series on that.
Yeah, there's another terrible one about this. Well, I actually don't even want to talk about it because it gave me nightmares. But it was yeah, no, I grew up in a haunted house. My mom is an ICU trauma nurse, and there was always stuff going on in my house. And I think it had to do with what she experiences at work and stuff and all that. So yeah, I could tell you some good ghost stories though. But I digress. This is about you guys, not about me. So make sure I don't do that.
I have a question for Alice and Jeff.
Yes.
I have a book. No. There was someone once I know, or it might have been a writer, or you may have heard that they say everyone thinks writing's so easy, but if, writing is like having to write having to write a paper or an essay for school every day for the rest of your life. It'd be hard. I'm a big horror fan. I actually really like horror short stories. And I'm kind of wondering if either of you or both of you could suggest any good horror anthologies that I might like.
Alice,
I've done a
got
bunch of our stuff or overall. I've done a bunch of short story
Hey, your
collections.
stuff or any stuff. I've read a lot of all the old, Ray Bradbury and Stephen King and a lot of all the really, really old stuff. And I'm kind of trying to find some new anthologies to read. But I like kind of traditional, just kind of really scary ghost or just kind of thriller stories. And short. I have a short attention span.
Because I've done 4 books of short stories. I've done Gleefully Macabre Tales, Dead Clown Barbecue, Everything Has Teeth, and Candy Coated Madness, which are all short story collections.
I'll check you out.
But
Are you on Amazon?
yes.
I said the A word, but
Oh my God. That's the name of my punk band now. I'm gonna name my punk band. I'm sorry, Dead Clown Barbecue.
Dead Clown Barbecue.
What was that last one again?
Candy Coated Madness.
Oh my God.
oh, I like that.
Oh,
I'll check you out, Jeff.
oh
How
my
about you,
God.
Alice?
Those are great names. Oh my God. I love
They're
that.
appropriate. So if you would not read a book called Candy Coated Madness, that book is not for you. It's
Right.
kind of-
Yes.
So-
It's that makes sense. I like that. There's no surprises.
Right.
This is going to be, if you don't like that title, you're probably not going to like that book, right? I love that.
Truth in advertising.
Truth in advertising. So have either of you ever been nominated for any awards? Alice, nominated for any awards?
I haven't. I won. I won the Scribe Award.
Ooh, that is awesome.
It is for media tie-in novel. So it's a genre that doesn't get a lot of love. For some reason, movies based on like comic books get a lot of love. And of course, comic books, you could write about Superman, for example, and you'd get a lot of love for your comics. But when you write a novel based on like a TV show or a movie or a comic, this organization was created called the International Association of Media Tie-in Writers. And so that's their award. So I got it for best novel for this book. It was a Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, very cool.
Portal Through Time. It was a fun time travel book to write. So that was my award.
That's so cool. Alice, great job. That's
Thank
really
you.
dope. And I love Buffy the Vampire Slayer, by the way.
Oh,
I
cool.
watched
Me too.
all the show from the beginning to the end. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love the characters, everything. And it made me laugh. The show made me laugh. That's why I liked it so much. Because I don't think that any show should take itself too seriously when it's vampires. Like, get over yourself. You know what I mean? I mean, come on. Jeff, have you been nominated for any awards?
I have won the Splatterpunk Award for my short story, The Tipping Point. I have a trophy for a game show at the convention Nikon, which was you had to identify quotes from 1-star reviews and whether they belonged to you or not. And I came in first. It would be like, is this even a real book? Hey, that's from my book Wolf Hunt. Point. And so I have that trophy. I'm a 4-time Bram Stoker Award finalist, 0-time winner, but I emceed the banquet 10 times.
Oh my God.
And emceeing the Bram Stoker's Award banquet is kind of like doing stand-up comedy, except that the audience has no expectations whatsoever. So they're expecting to be miserable and bored for 2 hours. So any degree of entertainment you can provide, they're happy. So it's the opposite of a real stand-up comedy show where they're like, you better entertain us.
Yeah.
So you don't get the heckling, you don't get any of the bad stuff. You just get the audience that's in a good mood because they're at an awards banquet and they're waiting to see if they won, but they don't care if your jokes bomb or not. There's no stakes to it.
God, that sounds divine. Actually, that's terrific. So you
don't get paid either.
You've been nominated 4 times.
Yes.
But now, however, I mean, I'm not going to say that you're the Glenn Close of Bram Stoker Award, but she's never won, by the way. She's been nominated 10 times, never won. Isn't that sad?
Really?
Yeah, she's never won. That's why this last time she was supposed to, I thought for sure they would give it to her as a pity trophy or something, but they didn't. It was really sad.
Oh my God.
What? No, because she's been nominated so many times. You can't just keep smacking somebody down like that. I think it's rude. She's a good actress. I mean, come on. Anyway, So what I was going to say, but the people who won, tell us the people that won though. I mean, you know what I mean?
I personally lost to Jonathan Mayberry, big name author,
Yeah.
Peter Straub, big name author, and Stephen King twice. So it's not
Oh,
like
wow.
I lost to someone. Oh, are you kidding me? It's pretty much, yeah, that's how it was always going to play out. But
Yeah. I mean, that's because, yeah, I mean, I read that in your bio that, I mean, come on.
But I
Stephen
also have a
King?
punch card because Scott Edelman, who has the record, he's lost 8 times. So last year, the last year of the awards, it got postponed because of that stupid pandemic. He created punch cards where if you have lost but never won a Stoker, he gives you a card and he punches it. So I've got 4 punches in my loser
Oh
punch
my
card.
Okay.
But
And so what do you win? Like a yogurt or something? What do you get at the end? Anything?
I think at the end you just get complete shame of accepting that it's never going to happen for you. But
no, but it might it'll still happen.
But I think if you win, you have to turn it in and just say, you know what, I don't get my card anymore. But
we'll see.
A yogurt at Eurie's yogurt shop, and she has to go back there and scoop it up.
I've been to numerous Bram Stoker Award banquets, and I got to say, Jeff is the highlight. Like, he's so modest, but we're like, Jeff's emceeing, yes. So we have extremely high expectations, actually, Jeff, of you to entertain us for those hours there, and you never fail.
Yay. That's great, though. But it sounds like it's really cool because it's, I mean, you're in a room with all these great authors. It must be really cool to get to meet them and hang out.
It's a lot of fun. It's easier. It's by the 10th year, you're like, I don't have any more jokes for best poetry collection. So from that perspective, it got harder as it went along. But you know, if you're doing a stand-up comedy show, you're in a room with strangers. You don't know what the common denominators are. Whereas I can do a Jonathan Mayberry joke. Everyone knows who I'm talking about. Everyone knows all the inside jokes. And so it's a lot easier to connect with the audience. And then of course you have all the spouses and you're like, okay, I'm not going to worry about the spouses. I'm going to worry about the authors. But you know, everyone is there for the same reason. You know most of them personally. So it's quite a bit easier than the, you know, hell of trying to do a stand-up comedy show with people you don't know at all, and you don't know what jokes aren't going to land at all.
No, I understand what you're saying, but still, I think, I mean, these are writers, so you whatever you're saying better be written well. You know what I mean?
A lot of work goes into it. It is definitely not on the plane. Oh, this is easy.
No.
I don't get a lot of writing done in the weeks up before it because I, you know, try to make sure every single joke lands. Because one disadvantage over a stand-up comedy show is if a joke bombs, you just move right on to the next one. Whereas I'm up and down off the stage all the time. So if the monologue jokes bomb, you just go on. But if my joke for, you know, the President's Silver Hammer Award for HWA volunteers, if that joke bombs, I don't have anything else because I need to get off the stage and let the presenter come up. So you only get one chance. And if it bombs, it's just this silent, sad, shameful walk off the stage.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I can give you a few tips. If your joke doesn't hit, usually there's some, you can always kind of fix it. One old one is pull out a piece of paper and just cross that one off. Put it back in your pocket. That's always a good one. Okay, I won't be doing that again. Got it. Okay. You know, so there's little things you can do to still get that laugh at the end. But yeah, yes, I think it's cool that you've been emceeing it forever. You've been nominated.
Well, I stopped after 10.
Well, you did stop.
I hit 10. I hit 9. And I finished with the 9th one. I said, I am so happy with how that went. If I go to 10 and make sure it's really good, I can quit on my own terms. Because it was one of those I have to get invited back every year. And it's like at some year, someone will say, I don't care if Jeff Strand does it or not. So I thought, well, if I do 10, then I'm 10 for 10. I'm happy with, you know, not everyone was a masterpiece from beginning to end, but I'm satisfied with all 10 of them. So I thought, I'll quit on my own terms, and then I can actually enjoy the banquet from then on instead of being sick to my stomach for the entire weekend before it because of intense stage fright, which vanished as soon as I got up on stage.
Mhm.
As soon as the first joke worked, I'm totally fine. But up until that moment, it's like, okay, this could be the year that I humiliate myself. But yeah, I hit 10 and said, all right, 10 is a good run. Quit on my own terms. No one fires me. And then I can enjoy the rest of StokerCon.
Well, yeah, now that you kind of work for yourself, I mean, you don't want to be fired by, you're kind of
Yeah.
used to not being fired. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I get that. I completely get that. Alice both mentioned different conventions for authors. What are some of the better author conventions out there? You guys, are there good ones?
I think going to a genre specific convention is the way to go. When I first started going to conventions, I went to a general convention, and I remember I was writing horror at the time, and they had these luncheons where they sat writers of the same genre together with editors that published that genre. So there was like a romance table, a mystery table, but they had hardly any horror writers and hardly any inspirational writers. So they stuck us together at the same table.
Oh, that's
And I remember at one point, an inspirational writer said, "We try to inspire people to live better lives." And a horror writer remarked, "Oh, really? We just pretty much try to kill them." But so there wasn't a lot of authors or editors or agents there in my genre. So I would say, like, for thriller writers or mystery writers, Left Coast Crime is a really good one, especially if you want to hang out with other writers. And BoucherCon's really good if you want to connect with readers. Let Thriller Fest in New York. I haven't been to that one yet, but I hear it's amazing. It's rather expensive, but that's a great opportunity to meet agents and editors if you're pitching a new project, and also just hang out with other authors and commiserate and
It's
share
very-
tips.
That's a great story, though. I love that. I'm trying to inspire people. Let me see if I can get her voice right. I'm just trying to inspire people, and I really want to help people. And you're like, I just want to create a really good killer and have it just kill people in my novels. So yeah, I love that. I think that is terrific. That reminds me of a time that I was in a break room at work one time, and I was reading, and these two women next to me were like, "Oh, and I'm reading this book that's so inspirational. It's teaching me about my inner peace and my inner love." And then the other one was like, "I'm reading this book and it's really lifting me up." And then they looked at me and they go, "What are you reading?" And I go, "Oh, I'm reading Junkie by Burroughs." Why? It just kind of crashed everything. It was really sad. Jeff, are there any good festivals or that you like, or conventions that you
I
like?
agree that it's always a good idea to go with the genre specific ones, not exclusively, but it's always good, Joe. So for horror, Scares the Care is back on this year. That's up in Williamsburg, Virginia. And it's called Scares the Care because it's basically a charity convention for horror authors. So all the proceeds go to a good cause. It's a mixed media convention, so there'll be the movie stars and that type of stuff, but they have really strong author programming. So I'll be there. They have readings, they have panel discussions, and then you can buy all the horror books you want and get them signed directly by the author. StokerCon is a big, fantastic one that went virtual. That's actually this coming weekend virtual, but it will be in May 2022. It'll be in Denver, back to a real event. Killer Con in Texas, that's again virtual this year, back to normal next year. That's a smaller, more lighthearted, goofy kind of convention. That's the one where they'll have horror writers like me who are dumb enough to volunteer for such things, doing the Wings of Pain challenge, where it's like, all right, everyone eat the first hot wings and now read a quick excerpt from your story, and now do trivia questions as they get hotter and hotter, just to show that you've maintained your mental agility, which I left early, but so that's a good one. As far as non-genre specific ones, I'm going to be at the Atlanta Writers Conference in November doing a 2-part talk on surviving the writer's life, which is inspired by my first nonfiction book, which came out in December, called The Writing Life, Reflections, Recollections, and a Lot of Cursing. And I'll probably drop the cursing from the live presentation because I don't know the audience, but it's a foul mouth going through, here's how you can get past bad reviews. Here's how you can get through rejections. Here's how you can get through it. Here's how I got through it when my attempt to intrude on Alice's territory by doing a media tie-in novel completely crashed and burned because they promised me a New York Times best-selling opportunity, and then the editor went on maternity leave and then quit forever to become a mom, and the opportunity disappeared. And it's like, okay, that really sucked. So it's like, here's how I got through that kind of heartbreak and devastation. So I'm doing a presentation that's inspired by that. And the convention has lots of pitch sessions where you get to sit down with a stern looking editor or agent and tell them your book premise, and they have to sit there and listen to it. They're contractually obligated to do it. So it's the equivalent of the, can I tell you about my book? And you tell me what you think, but they have to do it. They're receptive to it. You're not just doing it to some random person. So that's the Atlanta Writers Conference in November. So that's a good one. Those are pretty much the ones I go to every year. Nikon, that's a much smaller horror one. That's where they have like the roast where you just say horrible things about someone Saturday night. I'm usually the MC for that. So that's where I get to be a complete jerk. Instead of the dignity of emceeing the Stokers, this is the foul mouth, just offensive comedy. So,
oh my God, I love it. That's my favorite. That's really quick before we get into your recent projects that you've done. I'm curious about because Alice, you were talking about deadlines and has that happened before? Have you had like a writer's block, or I just don't know where this story's going, or has that happened? And what did you do to pull yourself out of it?
Maybe this sounds a little. I've noticed that when I have a deadline where the publisher's expecting me to deliver on a contract, knock on wood, I've never had writer's block in that kind of situation. When I know someone's like counting on me and they need this done by a certain day, I've never been late on a deadline. And I've had some really tight ones, but there's definitely been times when I felt I've met my deadlines, but there's been times when maybe I don't feel like the book is going as well as I'd like it to be, or I'm beating myself up. Jeff had this awesome quote, and I can't remember it now. It's something like, you're never more sure that a book is going well when you first turn it into your editor, and you're never more sure it's terrible as when you get the galleys, or something like that, Jeff.
It was in the final proofreading stage when you can change everything, the book is a masterpiece. In the galleys stage, you can't really change much except for actual mistakes, and that's when the book sucks.
Right. So there's definitely a lot of self-doubt involved with being a writer. I recently actually was talking to a writer who was, everything I write's brilliant and it's a masterpiece. And I thought, wow, what must their world be like? I mean, to think everything you write is amazing. So thankfully I
probably look at their mom, but sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
When I'm thinking like, what am I going to write next? I have just so many ideas. In fact, for my current series, they wanted me to pitch a third book in the series, and I pitched my editor 4 ideas and she liked them all. So it's usually like I have a lot of cool ideas I want to work on, and I just have to narrow down which one I want to do next. So thankfully, not really the traditional kind of writer's block. And I have all kinds of tricks to like power ahead. And when writers reach out to me saying that they're blocked or they're struggling to finish a manuscript, I have like little tricks that I tell them that have worked for me in the past. One is you could tell yourself, I'm just going to write 50 words. And then when you sit down to write those 50 words, you're generally going to go over that and get inspired. Another trick I've used is leave off halfway through a sentence when you quit for the day. So then when you sit down the next day and that sentence is sitting there unfinished, you're like, well, I got to finish the sentence. And then you typically will go on and write more than just that. So there's little tricks like that. And I always, when I'm writing a first draft, think of James Thurber's quote, don't get it right, get it written. Like just power through that first draft. You can fix everything later. There's a lot of writers, especially newer ones, who just agonize over every sentence and they want it to be perfect before they go on to the next one. And you can just completely bog yourself down into inaction doing that. So just, even if it's bad, just get it all out and then just tell yourself, I can fix this all later.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Wow, those are all really cool tips. Jeff, any writer's block for you, or? Is that
Not
a
really. I agree with everything Alice said. Writer's block, I consider writer's block when you can't write anything, as opposed to I cannot, how do I get this joke to work? And I don't know what happens, where I write myself into a corner all the time.
Or
We're
how
like,
do,
okay,
how do I get from here to there?
these
And
characters are screwed. I can't save them. What am I going to do? And so it can involve either, going for a really long walk until I figure it out, or it can involve, okay, that chapter doesn't work because there's no way for these characters to survive. So I have to back up and rewrite. If I'm not on too tight of a schedule, I like to work on multiple books at once. Because I said I genre hop, and my young adult books are joke, 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 joke. And after about a page 150, I start to think, God, wouldn't it have been nice if I didn't have so many jokes in here, but I have to keep it up. So it's kind of, if I'm just like, I would like to write a book where I don't have to be funny every single paragraph. Then it's fun to just switch back to the horror novels where there's lots of humor, but it's not necessarily with that kind of pacing. So, if I have that option, a lot of times it's like, oh, the book is due in 2 weeks. So I'm working on that and nothing else in my life exists, including meals and sleep. But if I'm at a more relaxed schedule, I do like to work on two different types of books at the same time. So if I'm a little burnt out on the joke one, I can switch to something else. Or if I'm in the mood to write really stupid, goofy stuff, I can switch to that. But a lot of it is long walks, just step away from it. I absolutely agree with Alice saying, if you can stop in the middle of a sentence. I like to stop when I know what's going to happen next, as opposed, so when you start, like, oh, what, I know the next 2 pages, I get right into it. Then the momentum takes me into the parts where maybe I don't know what's happening, as opposed to waking up tired, thinking, I wish I could go back to bed, and then staring at the screen where it's like, these characters are still screwed and I don't know how to get them out of it, and I can't kill them on page 50 or it won't be a novel. So
wow, I never even thought of that. I really want to kill this character. So your life inspires you. That's what you were saying before, Alice. What about characters? Like, where do those come from? Do you meet somebody, or do you think of somebody, or tell me a little bit about that process? Where are these people come from that you're creating? Everything, the killers, who are they?
So I think of a plot before I think of characters. So I usually think of a plot and then I think, okay, what kind of character would be most challenged by this plot? And so then I'll create, like, if they have a certain fear maybe, or an inability to do a certain task, I will stick them in a situation where they're forced to overcome their fears. Or I stick them in a situation, like in my current thriller, the lead character is a wildlife biologist who cares, like, very, very deeply and passionately about helping wildlife. So she's in this situation where she's working with this endangered species who's imperiled, and she has to really put herself out there to go the extra yard to save these creatures. So I usually think about that. I don't tend to base characters on real people, although there's always a little bit of myself in my characters. There's definitely pieces of me in my wildlife biologist character. We both feel very passionately about helping wildlife, and I made her into a tinkerer so she can fix a lot of things, and I'm a total grease monkey. I love fixing things, so I will put little parts of myself, but I usually don't use other people. There's sometimes I'll think of traits that I think would be fun to have in a character, or endearing, or maybe just asshole-ish. So I have some real jerks in the Solitude of Wolverines, and so sometimes I'll take people's sort of opinions or ideologies, like my character believing so strongly in helping wildlife, and I'll make up a character that has those traits or has those ideologies.
Oh, very cool. So I know it's a 4-part series, or I think you said it was 4 parts or 3 parts. 4 parts, right?
The current thriller is it is actually going to be 4 parts. I just actually sold 2 more books in the series. So right now it's just the first book's out, A Solitude of Wolverines, and then the second one, A Blizzard of Polar Bears, comes out in November. And so now I'm embarking on writing the third book, which is going to be about mountain caribou. I'm so excited about that one. So.
Never heard anybody say that sentence in my life. It's going to be about mountain caribou, and I am so excited about mountain caribou. You're so awesome. No, but I'm excited. I'm excited. Actually, I want to read your series. I'm very excited about it, and I'm excited that because I love thrillers, and those are great. So yeah, I'm excited to read your series. Tell me a little bit, Jeff, just about your, how do you come up with your characters, and kind of a little bit of your process, and then give us, an insight on what's coming out, what's next for you.
For me, it's similar to Alice. I don't generally base characters on real people. It's a real organic process. I don't do a lot of pre-planning. So, you need to have full character sheets. I don't have any of that. I don't know what my characters had for breakfast unless I'm writing a scene where they're having breakfast. Mm-hmm. But it's, it's instinctual, sort of organic. And I just sort of, whereas the stories, I kind of work them out in real careful detail. The characters I just sort of go with, and then in the future drafts, like, okay, let's work on specific speech patterns and the things to differentiate them from each other. But it's really, there's not a lot of conscious thought into the characters, unlike the stories. So I just kind of write what feels natural. It sort of depends on the specific book, because I'll do books that I want it to be as realistic as possible. So if I'm doing a thriller, it's like, okay, the characters have to talk the way people would talk in this situation. If I'm doing my Andrew Mayhem series, which is a 5-book series, that's sort of an amateur detective. Even they're horror novels, but the character is an amateur detective. And in that genre, the idea of, snappy one-liners is appropriate. So if he's, if he's got a gun to his head, he can say something funny that you wouldn't say in real life, but you can say in that type of book. And so I have some books where I can be goofy. I've got a book called Clowns versus Spiders, where sort of the joke is that they're humans, but they have no personalities outside of their clown personalities. So they're always in makeup, and they only refer to each other by their clown names. So I was allowed to be a lot goofier in that one than I would be in, really dark thriller like Pressure. So it kind of changes from book to book. With my young adult stuff, they are goofy comedic characters, but they also have to be credible 16-year-olds.
Yeah.
So I can't have them talking like a old guy like me. They have to talk like, kids, but in a funny way for books that are kind of stylized. So it varies per book, but generally, it's not something where I ever sit down and here's my outline of this character. Here's my outline of this character. I don't really plan that out ahead of time. It's just kind of where the characters go. So
that's
for the other part of,
I just really quickly, I want to say that that's really interesting, because it sounds like your process for starting a book is pretty calculated, right. But then once you're in it, it's all organic. So I think that's really interesting.
It's a lot of preliminary work, even though I'm not a full outliner, but I like to have a decent idea of where the story is going to go. And then instinct takes over.
That's really cool. So what you have projects that are coming out recent, what's new for you?
Coming up, I've got a book called Deathless, which is the sequel to one of my most popular books, Pressure. So that's in my darkest thriller type. There's a lot of humor in it, but it's a dark, hopefully disturbing thriller. And that will be out in August. And then I have a novella that's going to be part of a 4-author collection called Slice and Dice. And my contribution is called 20th Anniversary Screening. And it's about it's something I've never tried before. It's fake nonfiction. So it's like a mockumentary, except in novella form. And it's supposed to be the equivalent of reading a website, and you're reading about the 20th anniversary screening of a really mediocre slasher film called The Roofer, and the tragedy that happens on the 20th anniversary screening of it. And so that will be out. It's completely done. That'll be out sometime this summer. And then I'm finishing up a book called Creep Out, which is my contribution to the possessed ventriloquist dummy subgenre. And so the cover of that has a scary dummy. It's there's a lot of humor in it, but the dummy itself isn't funny. The dummy, sort of the gimmick with the dummy is that he likes it, it's a living evil dummy, and it likes to say, want to hear a joke, but it's never a funny joke. It's want to hear a joke, I'm gonna slash your throat. And so it's I'm a horror author. I don't generally do scary. This one I hope is scary, but I will let the reader decide. But I think it's a fun one. It's got a lot of, it's not the first possessed ventriloquist dummy book out there, but I think it has a lot of twists and fun stuff so that it stands on its own.
Jeff, if you hadn't said it, of course it's a possessed killer dummy. That wasn't the surprising part. The surprising part would have been like, it's just a piece of wood. Like that would have been the surprising part. Of course it's possessed, as they all are. I mean,
well, that's what the characters are. They're joking about. They're like, obviously this is a living possessed. As soon as he inherits it, it's like, this thing is alive, of course, because all ventriloquist dummies are possessed.
Of course. Oh my God. No, I love that. Well, you know what? I think we are pretty much at the end of our show. Alice, did you want to tell us about anything? What do you want to talk about real quick? What's some last words here? Oh, that sounds terrible. I'm sorry.
Oh no.
Yeah, right?
If these are the last words you ever speak, what will they be?
No.
Really not as entertaining as Oscar Wilde's last words. Weren't they something like, either that wallpaper goes or I go?
Or I do. Yep.
So, yeah.
One of us has got to go, either the wallpaper or me. And then, yeah.
I guess my last words are thank you so much for having us, Eerie, and everyone that tuned in. This has just been so much fun.
Hey, you have been alone in the forest, so anything's fun to you, but just kidding.
Alone except for the bears. I have a family of bears that has been enjoying, instead of walking up the side of the mountain that I live on, they take my stairs because it's easier.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, every night they climb over the railing, go up all the way up the stairs and go over the railing into the forest. So.
Cool. Are any of them wearing like a vest or a hat or anything cool? Like, no.
No, but they have enjoyed completely destroying my little barbecue grill because they step on it to get over the railing. And so I think that thing's toast.
Oh, man. That's so crazy. Any bears, Jeff? What do you got walking outside your house?
Meth heads. So
not as fun.
I guess my final words would be stock up on Alice Henderson books because she's going to be eaten by a bear and their value will go up. So
obviously.
Sound advice.
Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you everybody who tuned in. This has been another Terrible Podcast by Comics. And thank you once more. Please check out Jeff Strand's books. He's amazing. He's a funny guy. I love how deadpan you are, considering, you're so funny though, but you're very deadpan at the same time.
No, people expect me to be really obnoxious. Like,
yeah.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeff Strand, I'm wacky.
There you go. That should be the last words. I'm wacky. And Alice Henderson, check out her books. Thank you guys so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Janine, thank you for your contribution. Jason, thank you for coming. Ellie, Bridget, and of course, Grimes, and my dad. Hi, Dad. All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you. Bye.
Bye, Eerie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.